Ladies and gentlemen, today's video is sponsored by regular fucking tap water. Are you dehydrated and in need of refreshment? Don't buy that energy drink crap. It's terrible for you. Just get some fucking tap water. Anyways, now that the sponsorship is out of the way, I wanted to show you a game here, and I can just give you a funny aside with it. This is a Terran player who has only one loss on their record, and it was me playing against them. It's a Smurf barcode account, but I wanted to show you this game as an example of how to survive a really bad start in ZvT. Because as I was getting into this match, I see the MMR of this player, and I'm like, that's kind of sus. Their barcode and their MMR is low. Maybe it's a really good player. We'll see. I'll just take you through the game and kind of my thought process. This was during an Agent Smith discussion, so I wasn't talking about the match while it was going. I was just trying to play the game and keep up with his musings and his information. I always go for a hatchcast pool, unless I know that it's particularly a cheesing Terran or something. So everything in the beginning goes pretty much normally. The real point where things start to get spicy is when the Reaper shows up and what the SCV does. The early game is a really important phase of the game, and I would advise any person who's trying to get good at StarCraft to really be really strict about knowing what your mistakes are. A lot of times people will focus on the last big fight in the match, and that's very misled because many times the last big fight was more or less going to have an expected outcome based on who got really far ahead. So whenever you're looking at your games, you should try to figure out, okay, am I ahead, am I behind, and how am I going to adjust my play based on whether I'm ahead or behind. And this game in particular, I felt like my early game was a disaster, but I ended up winning. I wanted to show you kind of how I didn't die in the mid game and what I did in response to the Terran's aggression. So this is the first step here, is trying to take a third base. You can take a third base at 27 supply, or you can take it at 30 supply. In this case, I just tried for 30 supply, and the Reaper is right there. And I want to show you the Reaper control here because it was actually quite good. They're getting lots of value from this unit, just trying to shave off whatever they can. And they're also, at the same time, they're shaving away at these slings here. At the same time, they have a Marine shooting my Overlord. And they also have an SCV patrolling at my third base. So when I send this drone over here, I can't actually take it. They've shaved off almost all my lings. I have one left that's about to die, and they forced me to make an extractor there. This is a complete disaster for me. I didn't really get just about anything that I wanted. Do I lose this as well? No, I at least keep the creep tumor. But the Reaper shift rally move commands to derp out the drone so it can't make the base, and then it moves back to start shooting it. And then it blocks this as well. So this is a Terran player who definitely was higher MMR than I expected, but nevertheless, like for the way that the matchup is played out, they have earned themselves a lot of control in the early game by how good they were with the Reaper and how annoying they were with the SCV. So just patrolling the SCV like this and putting the Reaper here like this. So what do I do here? My early game is scuffed. I don't get the third base when I want to. I have another queen on the way, so I'm trying to spend my money here. Do I have overlords on the way? I do have an overlord on the way. So it could be slightly worse. It's pretty bad, but it could be worse. My main is injected. I do have a creep lane that's trying to go. Is the Reaper going to kill it? It kills it. This is a great example of a bad early game. Wow. I wasn't even trying to have a bad early game, but it happened. Now the Reaper's pressuring in the main. A really nice thing about this Reaper pressure is it's also controlling the place that the Zerg is looking. So I have to look at the Reaper to deal with it. Try to save workers and stuff. Okay, we do get the Reaper there, so that's a little consolation prize. Still a disaster early game, but I'm making another 2 queens and trying to take that third base. I have decent Overlord vision here. All of the little lanes here into my base are filled by Overlords. And then I send these lings in, get an SCV. I should have pulled back with all these lings, but this here tells me, with this 4-minute scout, that I think it's a 3cc. There aren't like a ton of depots in the wall, and these Hellions have a very defensive posture. These Hellions could have ran immediately here and tried to YOLO into my drone line, but they didn't. And you can oftentimes make these kind of inferences as to why they didn't do that. Maybe they're trying to hit a Hellbat timing. Maybe they're getting a quick third CC. In this case, let's see what it's going to be. They've just got the Hellions. What are they going to do? Is it a CC here? Yeah, CC here. So they're taking a third. 35 to 33 workers. The upside of my situation right now is my queen count is pretty strong. I have 6 and I'm working on more. Because my third base was late, I'm just droning my bases because this is the phase of the game where it's safe for me to drone. You might like to have stuff distributed between your 3 bases, but because the Reaper SCV combo made my third base super late, I just want to drone really hard and make these numbers red, and that's fine. I can just transfer them later. You can also make the number go down by making a spore, making a bane nest, stuff like that. And then the queens should basically be positioned here, where it's mainly protecting the natural from Hellions, but also they could go help here if there's a Hellbat attack. I'm trying to push the creep. Anytime there's a Liberator, just pull the drones away. It's better to lose mining time than to lose actual workers. I'm trying to pull these away here too. I'll give you my vision. Pulling the drones away again. And they've done a great job of just being aggressive. Aggression with Hellions, aggression with Libs, making me do stuff at home, microing my drones around. But I have 17 lings. Usually getting about 16 is basically fine for catching Hellions that try to dive. The 16 lings plus your queens should be able to beat them. It's still pretty hard because you have to make sure the lings are in the right place at the right time. The main tip would be to just look at the minimap as much as possible. It's a habit that basically every Zerg can get better at. Most of the stuff that you need to do doesn't really require you to be like tunnel visioning 1 or 2 units. You can be doing a task like tell the queen to go inject the base and look at the minimap. Like right here, we can see the Liberator, this little red dot on the minimap. Trying to fix this. Workers lost so far is 10, and I've killed 1 SCV. This is kind of normal. In the beginning of the match, the Terran is usually the aggressor. And the reason for that is they have the power spikes of mules before the Zerg gets their power spike of 3 injected bases, which I'm approaching here now. Do I have it yet? Main, natural, third. Okay, I do have the 3 bases injected. That's a big celebration moment for any Zerg player who wants to macro. Once you have 3 bases injected, you can just celebrate quietly to yourself or loudly, but it's a huge milestone in being able to spend your money and really get supply going for yourself. But nevertheless, I am behind. The early game was poop crap for me, big time. I'm getting my 4th base. I'm filling these gases. I'm getting Bane speed, getting a Hydra Den, and really trying to push creep in front of the 4th. So my creep here is pretty good. The Liberator doesn't really help manage creep, and now there's a pretty scary push. So what do? A bunch of mines, Hellbats, and Marines with a Viking. I sent a Ling in there. Just trying to make as many units as I can. I have 75 drones. I have a Spore in the front of the 4th, which is really nice. It gives me detection. And Spores are really tanky, so I can just transfuse this multiple times. And it ends up being a fairly annoying obstacle for the Terran to deal with. They can't just fly their Medivacs over if there's a Spore there. And then now they're pretty deep on creep, so I can take a decent engage here. And we clear that. They YOLO into the main. 2 spores in the main. I highly recommend this. There's so many different doom drops and liberator plays and things like that just making 2 spores in the main, it puts a timer on medivacs if they're just going to fly around, and it limits the zones they can go to. But the Terran is still ahead. They have 73 workers to my 74. I have 6 queens, which is a little bit low. 9 queens is probably better, just for being able to have more DPS on the medivacs and also more wiggle room for losing some queens and not being out of the game. I have some Lingbane here. And then I do a pretty tricky move, I think, where I steal the lings and send them. Yep. So I use the steal command to tell the lings to go fight, and then the banes and all the eggs, that is my reinforcements that are being made, these are in the army group. And this is a way to not put all your eggs in one basket and to create chances to deal damage to the opponent. So units lost right now is looking pretty bad for me. The Terran has killed way more stuff than I have killed, but once you have the 1/1 lings, you can take some rather good fights, especially when they're trying to attack you. This is a thing that really frustrates me whenever I'm looking at a Zerg who only ever just defends, and then the Terran gets to have the best possible pre-split setup. They get to siege their units and meticulously put 1 mine here, a tank here, split the bio here, split the bio here, split the bio here, and then the Zerg just gets everything they have and they just run at it. That's how you die to mines really fast. So getting into the habit of seeing the siege being set up at your base and then just sending your lings at their natural and defending with your banes and your queens. It makes the game a lot more complicated for the Terran, and it means that you're not just playing it on their terms, you're also giving active threats to the Terran and saying, hey, if you don't deal with this, you're going to lose all your reinforcement units and all the units in your natural. But even still, we have not won the game and I'm still behind. So how do you survive and win? My economy is pretty bad. I'm just trying to be active on the map with my lings. Make sure I'm checking for when there's going to be a 4th base. I have some spotter units here, which are going to show me when that base is taken. And now I'm mixing in some Hydras. Hydras are really nice value against mines. They put pressure on medivacs. They do decently against bio. It's a nice unit to make as a stepping stone as you're working on your hive, and then you can eventually get into some lurker play. Lurkers are pretty good units even after the nerf. Going for the hive now. I feel pretty safe with Lingbane Hydra to go for the hive. This defense was amazing. How did they see this? A lot of Terrans have sensor towers and stuff to see incoming attacks, and they may have seen it with the watchtower. It could be a big play. Through the eyes of the Terran. How do you defend that Bane run by? Oh, yep, this watchtower sees this area. That's smart. That's a really good place to just keep their drop. So we attack that. And they're dropping here. Their economy is nice. 77 SCVs is nothing to scoff at. You could scoff at it, but that's a good economy. The bio stuff is running around. Nice 3 base saturation. They can transfer from the 3rd to the 4th base. I'm still behind, but the Terran so far has been unable to kill me. Sensor towers are kind of like Terran creep. So whenever you're going through, maybe you sweep a base with some Lingbane and stuff, if you can knock those down, that means that your future attacks are going to be more successful because they don't have as much reaction time. So we're trying to kill that. They're shaving off the lings there. Killing the rocks is another really big step for just increasing the chances that you can have a good fight later. Nice multitasking from the Terran. They have their orbitals on a key, their barracks on a key, factories, starports. That was a clutch defense. They did have this watchtower at this point. So good to know. This watchtower will fill any vision of a Bane run by in this area. You could still drop from this angle here. So if you did like a Overlord Bane drop or a Lurker drop or something, the Watchtower vision wouldn't see it. Just rolling the Banes in. As soon as the Banes are dead, it's often good to get out. I think I end up turning back a little bit here. This isn't the best fight for me, but it is a fight. Put Changelings here just to mess with them. Getting the Lurker Den now as my hive is finishing up. I want to get a 5th base here too. Super, super important. Saturate your 4th for minerals before you take the gases. If you're looking at a Lingbane Hydra Queen setup, almost everything that I have requires a lot more minerals than gas. All minerals, twice as much minerals as gas, all minerals, more minerals than gas, more minerals than gas, all minerals. So even though you might have the idea to go for lurkers and hive tech stuff in 3-3, the 6 gas is enough to afford getting up to that point, and then it's once you're actually making the lurkers that you want to have like 4 to 5 bases of gas. So we've evened out the supply here. My economy still isn't great, but I'm just defending with Hydraling Bane on creep and sometimes pushing a little bit off. And if the Terran ever strikes at me, I send my links into their base. That's more or less the big picture game plan here. Hydraling Bane to defend on creep. Queens try to creep and inject as much as possible. If the Terran sieges one of your bases, just yeet a bunch of links at them. And then keep your Bane Hydra stuff at home. Work on the hive tech as your Hydras are up and running. I'm just trying to play cat and mouse with a Liberator harass here. It's annoying, but it's a thing. Getting a Spire is pretty important because the Liberator transition is a pretty common follow-up to this sort of bio style. And you don't really want to be fighting it with Mass Hydra if they get the range upgrade and they have bio support. Corruptor is a better tool for dealing with that. So I'm creeping here. I still have a strong core of Hydra Bane. 11 queens is pretty nice. I have 76 workers to 74. Just trying to fix any creep that they mess up. Putting a spore in front of a new base is nice because if they siege it with mines, I can see them. It also puts pressure on libs. And look at their heckin' sensor tower coverage. That's crazy. And because the early game was so bad for me, it's going to be pretty hard to actually just kill their army and end the game. So I'm mainly just trying to survive until my tech gets higher up. And then I'm trying to anchor my bases and be unkillable on both sides of the map. So on the left side of the map, I set up something that keeps me pretty safe. These 5 lurkers plus a spore. Any attack that comes up here has to be pretty careful about this. If bio just runs in, all of it will die. If a Liberator is here, it has to make sure it's not getting shot by the spore. So this buys me a shitload of time if I face any Terran aggression over here, which allows me to keep most of my army and stuff here. Whenever I made this second round of lurkers, I did the control 3 sort of function where I just created a new group, which means that these are unhotkeyed lurkers. They're just defensive lurkers for some base upkeep and maintenance. They're the security guards for the left side of the map. So they tried to run at this, and look, stuff is just dying. It's really annoying for the Terran to try to kill you if you have lurkers. So how do you survive when you're behind? You make queens. You spread a lot of creep. Banes with speed on creep are really good at defending. Spores are super crucial for putting pressure on drops and Liberators. And just giving you detection for mines in front of bases. And then whenever they do like a really committed siege with their army, you threaten them with lings. Once the lurkers are out, I'm basically blocking off key parts of the map. Running in the lings there was a really good scout because now I see it's a mass lib follow-up. So I'm going to get my corruptor stuff going pretty soon. The Spire's already getting an attack upgrade. Taking my 6th and 7th bases now. Once your bank is big like this, you can take multiple bases at once. And it's not really a big deal if say there was something that went and killed this. Your real value is concentrated where your drones are. This is like future potential value, which you're okay with losing. And if you expand multiple times after your 5th base, like take your 6th and 7th at the same time, if one of them does get surprise killed, you can just transfer your stuff to the other base that's not killed. So I'm still behind here if you're looking at the bank, but I'm catching up. My worker count is really nice now. I can defend a lot of these ground pushes pretty well. They were able to push through there, but it dealt a lot of damage to them, which meant that my Ling Bane Corruptor follow-up there could sweep pretty easily. And then I'm just like dropping lurkers, trying to be really mechanically annoying and create attacks that require a really big response. That didn't end up being super great for me. Their defense was really good. And now because I've attacked in so many different places, I go for a strike at their production. Not quite able to kill them because the ground units petered out there, but the Corruptors got to clear the skies, which is awesome. And now, finally, I'm ahead in supply, 19 minutes in. Mainly from doing those Ling counterattacks whenever they threaten me with their army, and then having a lot of spore presence around my territory, having pretty decent creep, keeping the injects going. Those are Queen's off hotkey at my main natural and 3rd. Droning pretty high and going for mostly minerals. Like all these new bases were mining minerals for a long time before they start getting gas, because most of your Zerg stuff takes minerals. And even here, I don't even have enough minerals. So I'm moving the spores up. I have an Overlord creep drop, which delays that base a little bit. The creep is going. Just pulling drones away if there are libs. This late game Liberator harass is quite annoying, so if you feel annoyed by it, join the club. We have t-shirts. Pulling the drones to another base. And this is pretty scrappy. My supply is high, but my worker count is pretty low now. And I need to get vision of their future expansions. The main upside for me is they haven't really gotten a, 5th base? No, 6th base. They have a 5th base, their 3rd and their main and their natural are pretty much mined out now. So they're basically on 2-base economy. Even though they have a bunch of command centers and stuff, they really need to establish those outer bases. So I can just go in and take fights like this, and the 3/3 Ling Bane trades pretty well. The gas units are all killed there. Get an orbital command with energy, which is big. And then if you're ever starving for minerals like this, you can just drone a base. If you see a base doesn't have 16 workers at it, just drone it. Because you end up losing a bunch of workers over the course of the game. If you look at it, this match here, the green is me, I guess. I've killed 22. They've killed 66. Should be able to get some more. Now I have a Ling Bane Lurker Corruptor. Corruptors do the job of Hydras better, and Lurkers are just a very good ground versus ground unit. I could use some Overseers though and make this army comp better. You can check your idle worker button and see if you have idle workers, and then just hit Control and press that button. And then you can select all idle workers on the map, just send them to a fresh base. I also have a Ultralisk option here. If you just go for Ultras, sometimes it can fail pretty hard. Like say they went for Liberator bio like they did here. Liberators counter Ultras hard, but if you can wound their economy a lot, then the Ultras end up being really good against the Marine. And if they feel like they have to make Marines and they don't have enough money to make the fancy units like Ghosts, Ultras can be good units again. They're bad units most of the time, but every once in a while, you put an Ultra into a position, it does a decent job. Pulling the workers away there ended up being a massive play. This happens really often, and I would highly recommend this. They can kill all these workers because they killed this base and they control this area, but I just put them off to the side instead of just letting them continue to mine and run through their army and die. I just put them in the corner, which means they have to make a choice. Either you deal with my army here and you focus on your micro with your army, or you have to manually tell your stuff to go attack here and risk me flanking you from the high ground, which is bad. So if you ever have a base that's just getting shot down really fast, just box the workers and click them away to the side. That makes more work for them. And that ended up saving a lot of the share of my economy because they're focusing really hard on dealing with this. And then I can just select those drones and then send them to work. We have a Broodlord switch here. Again, because it's been a scrappy game and we wounded their economy a lot and traded out with their army, there aren't any fancy units like Ghosts and the Libs were taken care of earlier. We killed this base. And now the Terran's pretty much dead. And a lot of this was just from contesting them with counterattacks whenever they really commit. And then taking a lot of good fights on creep. Not really overextending too much unless I felt like I really had a major advantage. And if you notice, I didn't really take any main fights where I headbutt into a planetary. That main fight that I did take in their base was here by the natural, which doesn't have a planetary at it. Here would be really tough because you got rocks and a planetary. And then here is also pretty tough with the planetary. And this is a fairly narrow choke. But this is a really nice wide open area. So if you ever feel like the Terran threw away a couple drops here and there, they lost a bunch of their army value, you can just try to run up and contest their natural. Because if you take this spot and hold it, the game is over. And if you just take a fight here and trade with their army, with a good worker count, that's also a plus. So we can just take the last few remaining bases and they pretty much give up because they have 26 workers now. We denied them their 6th base. So big picture wise, I fell super behind. My early game was a disaster, but we were able to spread creep, eventually get up to our nice convergence point of 75 to 80 workers, hive tech, and then just put a lot of pressure by having lings at these outer bases, having creep, and then just taking a bunch of fights with a good economy. Remember to make 2 spores in the main. It's a really nice step. Makes the drop defense much better. Having 1 spore in front of your base like this is also really nice for making attacks easier. And if the Terran does like siege your 3rd base here and they pre-split everything in 1 clump, they want you to attack at that spot. That's what they're hoping for. So instead of just saying, I'm just going to run at your pre-split bio with mines, you can say, okay, I'm just going to keep my Banes here and I'm going to punish you if you step here with the Banes, but I'm not going to chase into this pre-split mine maze. I'm going to send my lings here into your natural. My lings go to your natural. I punish you if you hit my base with Banes, but I don't pursue you with Banes. And that's more or less how to play a catch-up ZvT, where you started out in a fairly miserable early game, but you still get to your late game stuff through very persistent and diligent defense of the swarm. Hope you found this useful, and if you have any questions about ZvT, ask now or not.